There are people who quietly live among the hustle and bustle of the city. Not loud, not showy, just silently planting small seeds of kindness every single day. And somehow, it's those very people who receive miracles in return, in the gentlest and most unexpected ways. Today, let me tell you a story about an old bus stop keeper, a man who had nothing but a warm smile and a pair of hands always ready to help. He never imagined that a small loaf of bread he chose not to keep for himself would spark a circle of warmth, passing through the hands and hearts of many, only to return to him, whole and more radiant than ever. And then you'll see, in this world, whatever we give from the heart, sooner or later, it always comes back. In a quiet corner on the outskirts of the city, there stood an old bus stop tucked beneath the wide branches of an ancient almond tree. No one could remember exactly when it was built, but everyone was familiar with the figure of an elderly man who was always there, long before the first rays of sunlight pierced through the morning mist. He was the bus stop keeper, a job that might seem small and insignificant. Yet to many, he was the first warmth they encountered each day. His name was Ben, as simple and gentle as the man himself. Every morning, without fail, he arrived earlier than anyone else. He wiped down the stone benches, picked up every piece of litter, and mopped up the puddles left behind by the night's rain. But what people remembered most about him wasn't the broom he carried or the faded coat he wore. It was his ever-present smile, kind, gentle, and full of quiet compassion. He greeted every single person who passed by, never missing a face. Some days, he helped an elderly lady climb onto the bus. Other times, he held an umbrella over a young schoolgirl who'd forgotten her raincoat. But there was one student who caught his attention more than most. A frail high school girl who often showed up with a worn-out backpack and eyes that always looked tired. More than once, she'd forget her wallet, lose her bus fare, or stand shivering in the cold rain. Each time, Mr. Ben would quietly reach into his pocket, slip a few crumpled bills into her hand, and offer her a small loaf of bread with a gentle reminder. "Study hard, don't be late for school." The girl would often murmur, "I'll pay you back," but he would always wave it off with a smile. "No need. Let's just say I'm investing in the future." No one really knew that he lived alone in a tiny house tucked behind the bus stop. No wife, no children, no family. But that never made him bitter or closed off. On the contrary, he lived as though the whole world was his family. And every person who passed through that old station, even just once, was someone he cherished deeply. Some people called him foolish, said he was giving too much for too little in return. But he would only smile and say, "I'm just doing what feels right. A bit of warmth, a bit of kindness." Sometimes that's exactly what someone needs to get through a long, weary day. And what he never knew was that those small acts of kindness one day would return to him in a way more beautiful than he could have ever imagined. That morning felt different. The sun peeked through thick clouds, scattering glistening streaks of light across the rain-slicked street. As always, Mr. Ben was wiping down the stone benches when a familiar figure appeared at the end of the road. It was the same girl, the poor high school student with the worn-out backpack and the shy smile. But something about her was different this time. In her hands, she held a fresh loaf of bread, still warm, steam rising gently from its crust. "I got the scholarship, Uncle Ben," she said, her voice trembling. "My final grades were better than I ever expected, and you were the first person I thought of." For a moment, Mr. Ben froze. He looked at the bread, then at the girl, no longer just a fragile student, but a young woman now standing firmer on her own 2 feet. A soft smile spread across his face, as light as the morning mist. "You did well," he said gently, hiding the emotion in his eyes that had witnessed countless quiet mornings like this one. "I'm proud of you." As she turned to leave, he gently held her hand back. "This bread is precious, but I'm not going to keep it." She blinked in surprise. "You don't like it?" "It's not that," he said with a quiet shake of his head. "I wanted to keep going." He walked slowly toward the small guardroom behind the bus stop, where Mr. Tuan, the night shift guard, sat dozing beside a cup of cold tea. Mr. Tuan, the one who slept little, worked hard, and kept the bus station safe each night, though few ever noticed. Mr. Ben placed the warm loaf in front of his old friend and smiled. "Have this for breakfast. Just came out of the oven. Smells amazing." Mr. Tuan looked up, surprised. "Where'd you get this?" "It was a gift from a young girl, but now it's yours." The old guard sat still for a moment, then quietly tore off a small piece and brought it to his mouth. His eyes shimmered, not from the taste, but from how the bread had come to him. A simple gift, passed from one sincere heart to another, now resting in the hands of someone who never expected it. And in that moment, something stirred within him. He looked at the rest of the loaf and thought, maybe this journey isn't over yet. Right then, an invisible circle began to move. From the hands of a quiet bus stop keeper, to the gratitude of a once struggling student, to the teary eyes of a weary night guard, that small loaf of bread had begun its quiet, miraculous journey, and it would continue on, spreading seeds of kindness wherever it went, just like how it all began. The loaf of bread didn't stop there. That afternoon, after finishing his shift, Mr. Tuan, the night guard, decided to stop by the local community kitchen, a small place that cooked free meals for the homeless in the neighborhood. There, he found Ms. Ha, a widowed woman raising 2 young children on her own, quietly working as a kitchen assistant, doing whatever needed to be done. Mr. Tuan handed her the loaf and simply said, "I was given this, but I think you'll know best who should have it." Ms. Ha smiled gently, nodded in thanks, and tucked the bread into the basket of meals she was preparing for the evening. To her, that loaf wasn't just food, it was part of a story left untold. A story that had begun with an old man who had little, but gave from the richness of his heart. That night, beneath the flickering street lights and the damp eaves of forgotten alleys, Ms. Ha stopped beside a man leaning against a crumbling wall. It was Mr. Hung, once a street performer, now homeless after life had unraveled around him. His face was gaunt, his eyes still bright, but filled with quiet sorrow. She placed a meal in his hands, then paused for a moment, reaching into her basket and pulling out the special loaf. "This one," she said softly. "Someone asked me to pass it on. They don't know who you are, but they believe you're someone who deserves it." Mr. Hung said nothing for a long while. He stared at the bread, then up at the dark sky above the makeshift shelter he now called home. A deep sigh escaped his chest. "It's been a long time," he murmured, "since someone gave me something without expecting anything in return." He didn't eat it right away. Instead, he held the loaf gently, like a treasure. Not because he was hungry, but because he could feel in every golden crackle of its crust the ripple of kindness that had traveled from hand to hand, with no need for explanations, no strings attached. The next day, Mr. Hung wandered into a volunteer-run classroom where orphaned and underprivileged children were being taught to read and write for free. He walked to the teacher's desk and placed the loaf of bread down. "Let the kids share it," he said quietly to the young teacher mid-lesson. "Today, I don't need it, but maybe some child out there will feel warmer because of it." Before the teacher could respond, he turned and walked away. But in that moment, everyone who witnessed the scene fell silent, because they understood this wasn't just a loaf of bread. It was an invisible message, a silent proof that kindness, when passed along, can change not just a day, but an entire life. And just like that, from the hands of a humble bus stop keeper, the loaf traveled through lives, through stories, through hearts, never once stopping. An early winter morning, the wind had picked up, and the chill in the air made everyone at the bus stop huddle deeper into their coats. Puddles on the pavement shimmered, reflecting the silver-gray sky above. As always, Mr. Ben was there early, wiping down the stone benches, just as he had done for years. But today his hands moved slower, his back bent lower than usual. Age, quietly and faithfully, had begun to leave its marks. He sat down on the bench he always chose, letting out a soft sigh. Lately, his knees had ached more. His eyes had grown dimmer. But more than anything, what weighed on him was the creeping thought that maybe he was no longer needed. That no one remembered the quiet old man who had stood guard here for so many unspoken years. Just then, a voice, familiar yet grown, called out behind him. "I brought you something, and you have to accept it." He turned around. There she was, the schoolgirl from long ago, but now a young woman, glowing in her crisp medical uniform, holding a carefully wrapped gift box in her hands. "I'm working at the clinic nearby now," she smiled. "It's my day off, and I knew I had to come find you." Her eyes were filled with quiet gratitude. Mr. Ben, startled, took the box in his weathered hands. He opened it slowly. Inside, a freshly baked loaf of bread. Tucked beside it, a small handwritten card. "You were the first person who made me believe that this world still has good people." This loaf is part of that belief. It's traveled far, from one person to another, through stories, through moments, through hearts. But somehow it found its way back, to the hands where it all began. Yours. Mr. Ben froze. Images flooded his mind. The shy girl with the worn backpack. The first loaf. A hesitant smile. A grateful glance. Then Mr. Twan. Moet ha. Mr. Hung. The classroom. Each life, like a ripple, quietly touched by a single act of kindness. "You see," the young woman said softly, "nothing you did was ever lost. Everything you gave just took a long, beautiful way around, only to come back here, to warm the one who first lit the spark." Mr. Ben sat there for a long time, holding the bread close to his chest, his heart filled with something too deep for words. It wasn't pride, not exactly joy either. It was peace, the kind that settles quietly when a life, no matter how humble, has finally found its voice. And then he smiled. For the first time in a very long while, he no longer felt like just an old man at a bus stop. He was the one who kept watch, so kindness would never be forgotten. You see, it was just a loaf of bread. Simple, small, yet within it lay something powerful. The quiet strength of genuine kindness. From the hands of an old man guarding a lonely bus stop, a man living quietly beneath the rush of life. That small gift passed from soul to soul. Each person who received it didn't hold on, but chose to pass it forward, to warm another heart. No one told them to. No one asked for anything in return. It was simply this: when you feel loved, you want to share that warmth, like a candle lighting another, softly, quietly, until the room glows. And perhaps the most beautiful part was how the bread made its way back to where it all began. Not by design, but by the quiet law of kindness. What comes from the heart will find its way back to the heart. In life, you may sometimes feel like what you do doesn't matter, that small acts of goodness are swallowed by the noise, that a loaf of bread, a smile, a quiet helping hand will soon be forgotten. But the truth is, every seed of kindness you plant takes root somewhere, in someone, and grows silently, until one day, in a moment you never expected, it blooms right in front of you. You may never know how your action today changed someone's life, but someday, just like Mr. Ben holding the very gift he once gave, you'll realize kindness never disappears. It just takes the long way home. So no matter who you are, whether you live in silence or in spotlight, believe this: every good thing you give is never wasted. Even if no one sees, even if no one says thank you, you will be the first to be healed by the light you quietly lit for the world. So keep being kind, because, like warm bread passed hand to hand on a cold winter morning, every good thing you do can become a miracle for someone else, and then a miracle for yourself. Kindness doesn't have to be grand. Sometimes it's just a loaf of bread, passed from one hand to another, a small gesture, a quiet act, a listening gaze, and somehow it travels. It touches lives, moves through hearts, and one day it finds its way back to warm the very soul who first gave it. Believe this: every act of kindness you offer today is a miracle waiting to return to you on a day you least expect, because life has a way of giving back exactly what you once gave to the world.